Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to do some more speaking feedback. We're going to do feedback on Daniel's speaking test. So let's get into it. Good afternoon. My name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
My name is Danial IELTS.
And what should I call you?
You could call me Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Where are you from?
I'm from Iran. I currently live in Iran.
Okay, so I'm from Iran. I currently live in Iran. Just a little bit short, right? Not very well developed. I know it's the first question in the test. You will not be judged for having one underdeveloped answer, but you know, the country where you're from, the city where you're from, the city where you live, and maybe just something about it, right? Like, oh, I'm from Iran. I currently live in city, which is, you know, in the north, in the south, or something like that. And which town or city do you live in?
Well, I live in Rasht, which is a city in north side of Iran.
Cool. So again, we get a little bit of development. I live in which is a city in the side of Iran. Maybe just a little bit more would be useful. I know they're part one questions. We don't need to develop them massively, but just a little bit of extra information would be nice. And do you like this place?
Yeah, it's quite lovely. I love living in this place.
And are there any famous places in this town?
Well,
Again, it's quite lovely. I like living in this place. Again, it just feels a little bit short. It's a one sentence answer. There are two clauses, but it's a one sentence answer. It just feels a little short.
I guess there are some historic places here, and
Love the intonation here. I guess there are some historic places. He's slowing it down. The intonation is stretched out because it shows that maybe there aren't that many historic places. So good intonation.
furthermore, it's a tourist attraction city.
Furthermore, fine, more development. I'm not a huge fan of furthermore in speech. I think it's better in writing, but it's okay.
But I don't know about other like famous places here.
Cool, nice honest. I don't know. A nice assimilation there. I don't know. I don't know. That T is dropped. I don't know. And what do tourists come to see in your city?
Well, as I said, that there are some like buildings, historic buildings that
Cool. So as I said, referring to something he mentioned earlier. Cool.
was made by the German engineer.
Said some buildings that was made. Now, is this a big problem? No. Some buildings that were made is more common. I certainly know some L1 users who use some buildings that was, so it's not a critical problem. There is something in the band descriptors in IELTS that says that, you know, if grammatical mistakes are characteristic or are similar to the type of grammar mistakes that L1 users use, you can still get a band 9 for that.
Engineers or Russian engineers, I'm not sure about it. They usually came to see there because
They usually came in the past or in the present? They usually come or came? Not sure. Sounds like he said came.
it's historic first of all, and second of all, the government
Love the cohesion, first of all, and second of all, very nice.
have made it much more easier, and it erects another type of things that could be much more bring more attraction to.
The pronunciation is just a little bit staccato here. It just feels a little bit choppy like this, just a little bit. Let's just listen to that part again.
Because it's historic first of all, and second of all, the government have made it much more easier, and it erects another type of things that could be much more bring more attraction to tourists there.
And again, another type of things. So things is a plural noun. I guess, you know, you could say that type is the head noun here, another type, but some other types of things maybe sounds better, but yeah, but okay. Okay, now I'd like to talk to you about memory. What kind of things do you have to remember every day?
Well, first of all, I guess I have to remember what
Again, beautiful. First of all, will he back it up with a second of all or an additionally?
I am going to do for that.
Again, just a bit staccato, a little bit choppy, just a little bit like this.
First of all, I guess I have to remember what I am going to do for.
I have to, so starts great. First of all, beautiful chunking. I have to remember what I am going to do. And even he used his hands to do this. So again, you might think that, that's not a big deal, and sure, but I recognize early on that Daniel is a high level candidate. And so now I have to decide now between the 9, the 8, the 7, and the 6, right? Obviously, he's not going to get a 5. Probably he's going to get higher than a 6 overall. But I'm trying to notice those small things, minor details that can really separate, the 9s from the 8s from the 7s.
For that particular day to, plan what should I be doing, what should I study.
What I should be doing. So these things are called embedded questions. So I have to plan. If it's a question, what should I do? But if it's an embedded question, I don't know what I should do. So the word order is a bit strange.
Or whether I have a meeting with some person
Cool. Whether I have a meeting is good.
or not. The second thing is about
Cool. So we started with this first of all. We had a long stretch of speech, and then we get the second thing. So again, it's good coherence over long stretches of speech.
my
Good cohesion, not coherence.
longer period, longer planning to remember what are my long-term goals are.
So the audio is not perfect quality, so I can't pick out every detail, unfortunately.
Such as, for instance, taking IELTS exam or
Such as repair work, for instance. We don't need both of those, such as and for instance, but, L1 users commonly do this with language too. Such as, for instance, it's okay. Of course, we don't want too much of it in IELTS. We don't want too much reformulation, but a little bit is okay.
finding professors for my education. These are type of things.
And are you good at remembering people's names?
Well, it depends. If
Just notice this isn't the first time he's answered a question with well, and I think perhaps it's the third time. So we call this stuff like fingerprint language. It's like language that a specific person uses. It's like their favorite bits of language. And I'm just wondering whether Daniel has this well as his fingerprint language. Again, in the holistically, in the global mark, will it really affect his score? No. But can it leave a negative impression on the examiner if you're answering too many questions with well? It can. And sometimes, even though it shouldn't be the case, with borderline candidates, if they are like between a 6 and a 7 for a criterion, sometimes those little things can, push the examiner one way or the other.
I know that guy, or I have a uh, daily interaction with him or
Love this daily interaction with somebody. Very nice.
her, I wouldn't I wouldn't mind remembering them. It wouldn't be
Not wouldn't mind. Wouldn't mind means like I'm quite neutral with my desire. Do you want to go to the cinema or the theatre? Well, I wouldn't mind going to the cinema. It would be okay for me, but that's a decision that we make, or it's about our desire. Whereas I wouldn't mind remembering their names. That's not a voluntary act. So we use don't mind. Like I don't mind it means it's okay. I wouldn't mind it means like I have a neutral desire, but I wouldn't mind remembering somebody's names. That doesn't really work. Remembering somebody's name.
difficult for me. But if I don't see them much, it would be a bit challenging to.
Again, just slightly strange with the conditionals. If I don't see them much, it would be challenging. That's not how our conditionals work. If I didn't see them much, it would be challenging, or if I don't see them much, it won't be challenging. So, the candidate just a little bit inaccurate with his conditional sentences.
Keep up with their name.
And again, keep up with their name should be a little bit more connected and chunked. It just feels slightly separated. Keep up with their name. And I'm not perfectly sure about this, keep up with somebody's name. You can keep up with somebody in terms of like motion. You can keep up to date with like the latest news. But I don't know to keep up with somebody's name. That's not a common collocation. And what kind of things do you sometimes forget?
Well,
We got the well again.
well,
And we got another well.
some things that are
So this hesitation, you might ask, well, what about this hesitation at the beginning of the question? It just looks like he's preparing content. I don't think he's looking for language. I just think he's been asked this question and now he's preparing content. So that's absolutely fine to have that hesitation.
not that much relevant in my daily life.
Not that relevant instead of not that much relevant.
For instance, in my studies, I somehow
In my studies, this is a common thing with Iranian speakers of English. They often put this little vowel sound of I between their S's. So instead of saying student, they often say is student. Instead of studies, is studies. Instead of school, is school. Instead of statement, is statement. It's common amongst Spanish speakers too, but it's also common with Iranian speakers. Not a big deal, but it is noticeable.
it happens that I
And just listen to it again, just in case you don't believe me.
much relevant in my daily life. For instance, in my studies,
In my studies.
I somehow it happens that I forget things about some formula or mathematical programming concepts. These are things that I forget quite a lot compared to
So the pronunciation here sounds really quite American. The vowel sounds are just so perfectly American. Really nice.
other things. But I guess I don't have any problem.
Bit of refo. I guess I didn't have. I don't have. So he is like self-correcting a little bit. Again, one of the things the candidate asked me is that, well, why isn't my fluency and coherence a 9, for example? And I mentioned to him that there were some errors with false starts where the candidate starts speaking, stops, and then goes back and then has to start speaking again. So I promised that I would be extra attentive with that fluency and coherence for the candidate. So if it feels like I'm very pedantic in this feedback, it's because the candidate has asked me to do this.
Remembering things that I need.
Let's move on now and talk about tea or coffee. How often do you drink tea or coffee?
Well, I'm a tea person,
We get a well, but I'm a tea person. I love it.
and I guess in Iran, most people like to drink tea over coffee.
Again, most people like to drink tea. We get most people like to drink tea, just a little bit staccato.
To be honest, I drink tea a lot, like six, maybe 7 cups of tea a day. I know it is a lot, and I'm planning to like mm, drink less, but I can't do it because I'm kind of addicted to it.
Cool, love this kinda. I'm kinda addicted to it. Very nice, very colloquial. And what kind of tea do you drink?
Well, I drink green tea, but I believe in Iran, most people drink black tea.
Cool, get nice ellipsis there. Most prefer to drink black tea, ellipting the word people. And what are some. Sorry, I lost track of the question there. I'm sorry. Popular places to get a cup of tea in your hometown?
Well, I guess you can find
Again, we get that well.
a cup of tea like anywhere. The most common place is cafe. Uh, uh,
Article, the most common place is maybe a cafe or in a cafe.
Other than that, you can find
Love this other than that. Beautiful.
street vendors. Uh,
And again, you can find a street vendors. Now, this is a very interesting thing. So, street vendors, plural noun. We know we shouldn't use article a because we use a with singular nouns. Candidate says a street vendors. Now, I don't know if he's using the article a street vendors or if this is this common Irani mispronunciation of like initial S when S is the first sound, when S is the first sound. Listen to it again. Does it sound like he's mispronouncing the word street or does it sound like he's using the article a street vendors? Listen to it.
uh, Other than that, you can find street vendors.
Interesting, isn't it? So I put it down to pronunciation. I think it's a pronunciation issue, but who knows? I'm not a mind reader.
Like when you like walking and want to go somewhere, there are lots of these places around the town, and you can see it. They are in the park, they are in the middle of the streets, anywhere you can find it. You wouldn't have any problem drinking tea in here.
Cool. I like that. You wouldn't have any problem drinking tea here. Again, very natural. Okay, thank you. Now, in this next part, so comments on part one. Candidate is strong. At the beginning, the candidate's answers were just a little bit short, but then towards the later questions, he developed a lot better. Cool. Development is fine. Love the cohesive devices that he uses. Signposting language, firstly. Secondly, other cohesive devices like other than that. I'm a big fan of this stuff. He used furthermore, which... However, there are some small cases of reformulation, just small cases. Pronunciation is very clear. I love the vowel sounds. I think the phonological range is very strong. The candidate produces most of these like features of English pronunciation in his speech. Cool. There is that small problem with the sir, and intonation is good, but it's not always maintained. There are like often when he starts answering the question, he starts it in a very nice with some very like good intonation, and the speech is connected, and like the sentence stress is great. But then when he gets into like the middle of the sentence, sometimes the language breaks down and his language kind of becomes a little more staccato. So I can't say that he consistently sustains aspects like connected speech, like even intonation, and like even sentence stress. But still strong, very clear, very easy to understand. Grammar is a little weaker, just a few basic mistakes. I expect candidates at this level to know conditionals a bit better, and a couple of strange collocations, like to keep up with someone's name, maybe to keep up with everyone's names. Maybe that's okay. So yeah, overall, so far in part one, a strong performance. I get the feeling, and I got the feeling when I was doing this, that the candidate is it's almost like the questions are too easy for him. It's like he has a strong foundational knowledge of English, but these questions like, do you prefer tea or coffee, think maybe they're not sophisticated enough. So I think he's going to do well in part three. But anyway, let's get to part two and see what the candidate has to do. So the task is for the candidate to describe a risk that he took. Notice that this is in past time, so the candidate should say when he took the risk, why he took the risk, what the result was, and explain how you felt about it. So notice all of this is in the past, so there is an opportunity to exploit this task and get, use good grammar, past simple, past continuous, past perfect continuous, past modals, reported speech, sequence of tenses, all of that good stuff. Candidates generally don't do it, we know. But of course, the big task or the big challenge of task 2 is speaking at length, because you have to speak on your own for 2 minutes. And so producing a coherent and cohesive text for 2 minutes fluently can be a challenge. But let's see how this candidate does. End of your preparation time. To remind you, you will have between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I will let you know when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Okay, so I want to talk about the time where I decided to submit my written article in which journal, but I have to
Called to submit my written article. Good collocation.
give a bit of background before that.
Have to give a bit of background before that. Very natural.
So the thing about master's students is that you
love that. The thing about is that very nice.
have to publish your articles, but you don't have to, but you have a thesis, and usually
thesis, not a thesis. So again, this one is always a tricky one. We have something, a new variety of English in the UK called MLE, Multicultural London English. And this is a perfectly accepted variety of English. And they also don't pronounce their th so much. They have more of a t. So instead of thing, they say ting. What's that ting? Instead of the, they say d. What's that ting? And there's a big question in, not just in IELTS, but in the whole, English language learning world about the nature of the correctness of language. And it's always difficult for companies or organizations that set the criteria for how should we mark it. Like, should we mark candidates down for not producing the th and the sound? Probably in 50 years, I don't think there's going to be so much of this the and th, even in Britain, but I don't know. We'll see. So just notice he said thesis. Now, at the moment, that's still, for me, considered to be a mistake. In my private life, I don't think it's a mistake. But in an IELTS test, probably I have to see it as a mistake. So he uses thesis instead of thesis. If he does it one time, okay, not a big deal. If it's a repeated mistake, it could count against him.
They decide to publish their thesis in a journal.
Again, thesis.
And the risk here was that we have different percentile of journals. Basically,
Cool. The risk here was that we so nice clefting.
we have Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. And the lower the number is, the high respected journal it is.
So nice there, almost so nice. So the lower the number is, the more well respected, I would say, is the real language. Not the higher respected, but the more well respected, or even the better respected could work.
So it would be much more challenging to submit papers on those journals. So the risk was that I was talking with my supervisor, and he suggested that it's better to submit.
Cool. He suggested that it's better to, yeah, absolutely fine.
In a Q1 journal.
Could say sequence of tenses, reported speech. He suggested that it was better to do something, or even subjunctive clause. He suggested that I should do something, but okay, no problem.
No, I was kind of two minds about that, but
beautiful. I was in two minds about that. Beautiful idiomatic expression, meaning I wasn't sure. A or B? A or B? I was in two minds about that. Very nice.
As I give it more thought,
again, taught instead of thought.
I came to realization that it would be actually.
Cool. I came to the realization. That's a small problem with the article, but to come to a realization is a very, very nice collocation.
Really good to have one paper in Q1 journal. And, the results of our submission is not clear because our paper is still under review.
Again, results is not clear. Results plural are not clear, or the result singular is not clear.
But I kind of feel anxious about it.
Cool. So just explain how you felt about it. We get the word anxious. Good.
Because it might got rejected, and
it might got rejected. So if we talk about present or future, it might get rejected. If we talk about the past, it might have got rejected.
The process of submitting,
but we don't say might got,
is lengthy.
Cool. Love this word lengthy. Instead of long, we get lengthy. It's a lengthy process. Very nice.
To give you an example, I submitted in like spring, and
again, pronunciation has just gone a little bit staccato. Just notice it just a little bit. The little bit choppy like this. Just a little bit. Notice.
To give you an example, I submitted in like spring, and we haven't heard about them because we have two referees that have to review our papers and give us feedback, and they have.
Yeah, instead of we haven't heard about them, we haven't heard back from them. That's the most natural construction here. We haven't heard back from them means we haven't got a reply yet.
Haven't said anything, and anything can go from now.
Again, not anything can goes, but anything can go, or anything can happen. Can modal. After can, we use our infinitive without to. Can do, can run, can go, not can goes.
So yeah, I'll give it more thought. If I go back in time, I wouldn't doing it.
Yeah. What was that conditional?
If I go back in time.
If I go back in time. Maybe if I could go back in time.
I wouldn't doing it.
I wouldn't do it, not doing it. So again, this is quite basic grammar, and it's interesting. I think probably the candidate has learnt English in a very natural way. I don't think the candidate has sat with a bunch of grammar books and memorized a lot of grammar rules. I think the candidate probably has had a lot of natural communication in his life and picked up a lot of the language. He's acquired English more than he's studied and learnt English, and it's interesting that we get a range of amazingly natural vocab, some very precise grammar, mixed with a lot of foundational mistakes.
I wouldn't do it because I guess it's okay to have a paper in Q2 or Q3 journal. I don't know, at that moment I was really fascinated and exciting to.
I was fascinated and excited, not exciting. The situation was exciting, but I was excited.
submit the paper in a
Okay,
very
thank you.
good one.
Always that wonderfully awkward moment where the candidate is speaking and you have to just say, thank you, and stop them from speaking. Nobody enjoys doing it, I promise. So, thoughts on part two? Very fluent here. There were occasions where pronunciation maybe just broke down. Didn't see a lot of reformulation here. I think this fluency and coherence was great in part two. Candidate can speak at length without any real effort. Vocab again, a lot of really natural construction, a lot of natural like collocations, like come to the realization that, or the thing I did was, that type of language, all good. And the thing that happens is those type of sentences, cleft sentences, we usually teach them at C1. Candidates can sometimes intuit them and use them anyway. So some pieces of nice grammar, but certainly a lot of strange mistakes, like anyone can does it, or anything can goes, and then we get I would doing. So that's like very foundational basic grammar. So a mix of strange grammatical stuff. Let's get to part three. I think he'll do well with part three. I think he's more suited to part three questions than part one questions.
Yeah.
All right, so you've been talking about a risk that you took. Now I'd like to move on and talk about taking risks in general.
Yeah.
Why do people, or why do some people like dangerous things?
Well, the thing about
Again, we get a well.
nature of taking risk is that
So the question here is about dangerous things. Why do people like dangerous things? And candidate starts by talking about the nature of taking risks, which, it's tangentially, it's partly on topic, but it's not fully on topic.
in order for you to gain more
But I love this, in order for you to do something very nice.
profit, you have a more return on anything. And I'm talking general. You have to accept risk. You have
But the question isn't what are the benefits of taking risks, or why do people take risks. The question is, why do people like dangerous things? So I'm not talking necessarily about investing. I'm thinking more like, I don't know, riding roller coasters, or doing extreme sports, or handling snakes, or something like this.
to tolerate risk basically. So there's a like a yeah, if you take more risk, you are more likely to get a bigger reward. But if you don't take risk, you probably won't get a good return on what are you doing.
Again, we have that systematic error now with conditionals. If you don't take a risk, you wouldn't do something. So this is the third mistake with that second conditional. If I did something, I would do something. The third mistake with that grammar in the test. And some people think that parents nowadays, they don't let their children take enough risks. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I'm quite agree with this. And
Not I am quite agree. A very common mistake all over the world, actually. Agree in English is a verb, and so with simple verbs, we don't use I am, right? We don't say I am eat, I am run, I am play, and we don't say I am agree. I agree, I quite agree, I more or less agree, I partially agree, I agree to some extent, but not I am.
I guess it happens to me, when I was kid, my parents
It happens to me, present time, when I was a kid, past time.
constantly was telling me that, it's better to have a constant job with a constant salary, where they give you
I don't have a constant job, it's okay, it works. Regular job is more common.
insurance, so you don't need to worry about the condition of the market. When you open up a business
Has become a little bit staccato again.
yourself, you always have to be worried about different
You always have to worry about, or you always have to be worried about, but not you always have to be worry about. So again, I'm just pointing out a lot of grammar mistakes here. I thought I'd already made my mind up about the candidate score, but I think I've just changed my mind about one or two things.
like, is there enough demand here, whether the situation is going to change, or you have to you provide insurance for yourself. But I guess parents, most of our parents are like have these non-risky jobs.
This is good chunking here. Most of our parents, so we get that most of our parents without any pause. So Canada does show good chunking in lots of places, just not always sustained.
And they always advise us to, follow daily.
So this is an example of poor chunking. They always advise us to, follow. They always advise us to, we want it more connected. They always advise us to follow. They always advise us to follow, not always advise us to follow. And that weak form of to follow, not the full form of to. Again, it's very pedantic because your pronunciation is great. Your pronunciation is amazing. Your English is amazing. I'm just trying to show you why you don't get the 9 for things, and in some cases why you may not get the 8.
Basically, I guess this is because that.
And who do you think takes more risks, younger people or older people?
But definitely younger one, because
Younger younger ones.
they have a long life ahead of them.
So this is for me a hesitation which is language based. They have a long life, and then candidate just can't quite access that bit of language. I don't know if it means a long life expectancy, maybe, or a long life ahead of them is absolutely fine. But just notice, it is noticeable that the candidate kind of takes a little bit of time to access and find that language.
They have a long life ahead of them.
So this for me is a great example of a mid-sentence hesitation which is caused by not being able to access the appropriate language immediately. Now, it's only a small gap, but we would expect from 9s to fill those gaps.
So it only makes sense for them to take risk. And I can give you a bit solid example about investing.
And again, if it only happens once, not a problem. If it happens a few times in the test, then it can become a problem. So now he's going to give examples about investing.
In younger one and the older one. So the thing is that
love again this. The thing is that I really like it.
Generally, the specialist in
Okay, generally, nice adverb to show that he's speaking about things in general.
investing suggests people that are between 20 and 30 to invest in.
So this suggest people to do something. I don't like that construction. It seems to be popular with L2 users of English, like offer somebody to do something, promise somebody to do something, suggest somebody to do something. I am on the team that those verb patterns, somebody to do something, those verb patterns don't work with suggest. Suggest that somebody should do something, fine. Suggest doing something, fine. Suggest somebody to do something, I don't like it.
More riskier assets, for instance, they
just riskier, not more. Oh, but more riskier assets, as in more assets. That's fine. Riskier assets.
Suggesting that they should invest in the stock market.
Now it's good. Suggesting that they should invest. Beautiful subjunctive clause. Very nice grammar. It's so strange to see a mix of some super high level constructions of grammar mixed with a lot of foundational mistakes. It makes it really tricky to decide on the score, but I think I have, yeah, it's okay.
Or such things like this. However,
like this, again, not quite getting the.
They strongly disagree with the fact that the older generation.
Love this with the fact that, again, good chunking there with the fact that, love this, they disagree with the fact that the older generation.
For instance, people in their mid 40 or 30-ish something to invest in such risky markets, and they.
Not sure about that infinitive, but okay. I don't want to be a pedant and focus on every detail because we are already 34 minutes into the video.
We often tell them to buy bonds or.
Again, just notice the language, just the connectedness of the language just broke down a little bit.
And tell them to buy bonds or assets that are.
Bonds, absolutely perfect pronunciation of bonds, amazing.
That can provide less return, but are less risky. So I guess.
And the candidate's fluency and coherence here is so good. Yeah, he's speaking about difficult themes. He's speaking about taking risks with financial investments, and he's developing and expanding and explaining with absolute ease. So fluency and coherence is so strong.
This is the reason.
And do you agree that in order to be successful at anything, you have to take a risk?
Well,
Again, we get a well.
it depends on a scenario.
Again, I want to see that more connected. It depends on the scenario. It depends on the scenario. We get it depends on a scenario. Just a little bit disconnected.
I guess generally this statement is true, but
Again, this a statement. This a statement. Again, that thing with S. You can hear it?
but I guess technically this statement is true. It depends on a scenario. I guess generally this statement is true,
This a statement. Generally, this a statement. It should just be one sound. This statement. This first s from this should disappear. This statement. This statement.
but I guess taking risk is not, taking risk could be defined
So these hesitations are not language-based. These hesitations are just to prepare content. Fine.
differently in various scenarios. For instance, if you are talking about the artist, for instance, taking risk for that artist is to basically exercise every day, to practice, to create a piece of art.
Good intonation. Da, 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 da. Beautiful intonation.
But the risk that he or she takes is to not doing anything that
Da, 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 da. Again, intonation is very strong here.
she likes. But taking risk for instance, an investor in the stock market could be more severe compared to that one because they could lose anything basically overnight. So I guess the definition of risk could vary based on each scenario, but I guess generally it could be true.
So there was a short edit there. There was just a small connection problem. So you can see this beautiful edit. Watch it.
Based on each scenario, but I guess generally it could be true.
Did you see it? Let's move on now and talk about extreme sports. Why do some people enjoy extreme sports?
Well, I
We get another well. I think this is like every question in part 1 or part 3 now.
believe that this is all mental and it's related to their
Cool to be related to. Nice collocation.
brain because those people are relatively young and like to
Relatively young, great detensifier.
do crazy things and experience like risky events, risky sports. And I believe it is because the amount of adrenaline that they would have in their brain if they play such sports.
They would have if they played. 4 mistakes with that second conditional.
So in some case, I could say that they kind of get addicted to it because they once experienced it and it was great and they wanted to do it again over and over. But I'm not really sure. It's just a preference and everyone is different.
Cool, fully developed answer. Very nice. And do you think some extreme sports should be illegal for people under the age of 16 or under 18?
Well, I mean,
Well,
some sports are in fact dangerous for
love this in fact. Some sports are in fact, and that stress of are, it's really good pronunciation, stressing the auxiliary. Some sports are in fact, maybe are isn't even an auxiliary, but okay. Some sports are in fact
many people, especially those one who are like growing
those ones who are growing.
basically the age of below 16 or 18. Example of such sports could be like, I don't know,
Such esports. Again, we have that esports.
boxing maybe. I'm not agree with making them
I don't agree.
illegal. I guess there have to be some regulation. For instance, in boxing, I guess
Just get quite a lot of this, for instance. So, you could vary it up. For instance, for example, there are a few other ways of giving examples, namely, such as...
if you're not playing professional boxing,
We don't play boxing, so that's a strange collocation that you box if you box.
you should have some equipment that, cover.
Really love that correction. You could have, you should have. He's showing that he's not correcting grammar, he's correcting meaning here. And this is a natural way. You could have, you should have. Very nice.
Your head or things like this. I believe they should have such instance of regulation in those sports, but
Those esports. Those esports. Those sports. Again, one sound. Those sports. Those sports. Those sports.
not to like make them illegal for other people, but it would have a negative effect on a children or a juvenile that want to do the sports.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of the test.
Thank you.
All right. The other Glyn was about to say, all right. So, all right, let's get into some scores for this. So, fluency and coherence, I don't think it's quite 9. I think there just were a few language-related hesitations and a few too many reformulations, but certainly close to it. So, amazing fluency and coherence in especially in part 2 and in large parts of part 3. Some of your answers in part 1 were slightly underdeveloped, and there were a few too many instances of language related hesitations and false starts for the 9. Don't feel bad, 8 is an amazing score for fluency and coherence. Lexical resource, I can give the 8 for this too. You have almost no difficulty accessing common and less common language. You use an amazing range of collocations, like not related to isn't the amazing one when it comes to, and there were a lot of them. Watch the video. I don't remember them all right now. However, there were a few instances, I'd say maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 even, few instances of inappropriate word choice, where it's just like keep up with a name or something, or I wouldn't mind remembering someone's name. That's just not the right word to use there. So again, to get higher than that in vocab, we have to have much fewer of those things. But again, 8 for lexical resource, amazing, great job. Grammatical range and accuracy, this is the most difficult one for me, because you did have an amazing range of structures. There were some very nice structures, including subjunctive, including a lot of cleft sentences. You got conditionals wrong. Oh, I should be writing this. I'm giving the 6 for this, and I feel bad doing so. So let's write down some of those good points first of all. You showed off some really impressive grammar, particularly with cleft sentences, and there was an instance of a nice subjunctive construction, like suggest that somebody should do something. Very nice. Subjunctive construction, all good stuff. However, you made repeated mistakes with conditionals, and there were also many noticeable errors with basic grammar. Things like I'm agree, or where we put that s, or using present simple instead of talking about the past. I don't think I can award C1 grammar to someone who has so many of those basic mistakes, unfortunately. Pronunciation, again, I'm torn between the 7 and the 8. Initially, I thought it was 8, but right now I'm going to jump it down to a 7. So, most importantly, your speech is clear and understandable without any effort from the examiner. You show some good intonation in places, but this sometimes, but there are noticeable lapses. So you either sustain and do it all through the test, or you go and you're doing good and then boom, you drop down, and then you're doing well and then boom, you drop down. These are lapses. So there are noticeable lapses where your speech becomes choppy. I'm going to use the word choppy. Well, it is like this a little bit. This is choppy language. So it does become choppy in places. There are some repeated mistakes with some individual sounds, particularly, I don't know about the t and the d, but the th sound and the sound, and you have the Iranian is sports, is sports, statement, is statements. So those things are noticeable, but still C1 pronunciation for sure. So I feel bad giving the 7 because I thought probably he was closer to 8. I thought at the beginning his pronunciation was the strongest point, but watching it back, it's clear that fluency and coherence and vocab are stronger. Okay, so this means that he gets just a band 7. Really thought the candidate was stronger than this, but okay, band 7, certainly nothing wrong with a band 7, right? That's C1, amazing, amazing level. The vast majority of people who start learning English will never, ever, ever get to the C1 level. Certainly, you have the potential to get 7.5 and even an 8 in the real speaking test. Areas of improvement. So, the first thing I notice is try not to answer try not to start every answer with well. It's not a big deal, but it can be distracting. It can be, displeasing for an examiner, possibly. You have to tidy up your basic grammar. I'd recommend doing a little work with conditionals. Conditionals are easy. They're very formulaic. You just learn them. No real big problems there. I'd recommend doing work there. It would also maybe be a good idea to review quickly all the grammar themes in A2. I think it wouldn't take you long. It would take you a couple of weeks to do all of the grammar themes in A2, making sure that you get it right. I really think if you have perfect A2 grammar, pre-intermediate grammar, this like third person S, what we use after modals, not ing, not s, present simple and past simple, that type of stuff. If you have perfect A2 grammar and you fix your conditionals, I really think your grammatical range and accuracy will be at least a 7. Pronunciation, there's not much to do because your phonological range is good. You're clear. It's just sometimes that language it just becomes choppy in places. It's not very well connected. There are a lot of interesting features in connected speech. You could try looking at it, but this isn't something that's an easy fix. Whereas these 3 things, I think they are more or less an easy fix. Boosting pronunciation, I wouldn't be surprised if an examiner gave you an 8 for pronunciation. I wouldn't be surprised. But these are my scores. This is what I think. Of course, there's always a subjective element to productive tasks like writing and speaking. There's always a subjective element. I wouldn't be surprised if an examiner gave him 7.5 or 8. I don't think an examiner could give him 6.5, but who knows? So I think I will leave it there. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown of Daniel's speaking test. I think he was a very, very strong candidate. And again, if it seems like I was quite pedantic with some of the points, it's because the candidate asked me to point those things out. If you would like your own free practice speaking test with feedback like this, or if you would like me to check your IELTS writing, I'm doing this for free. You have to join my Telegram channel, and a link to this Telegram channel is in the description below, and all of the instructions are there. Basically, you'll see a couple of messages. If you want a speaking test in this period, reply. Or if you want a writing test in this period, reply. You just reply to that message. At the end of the week, 3 candidates are chosen for a speaking test, 3 candidates are chosen for a writing test, and this happens every week. And still, the most common comment I will get is, how can I have a speaking test with you? That's what will be in the comment section, if anything. Anyway, enjoyed doing that feedback, and yeah, I'll see you all again very soon. See you. Bye bye.